Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Top Score Writing's live lesson for grades 6 through 8. My name is Mrs. Jones, and I will be your instructor for today. If you are just joining us as we are quite in the middle of our middle grades live lessons, welcome. We're so glad that you are here. We're going to encourage you to go back to the beginning of this series and perhaps watch the replays to get caught up and to make sure that you are on the same page with all of us. But if you are returning, thank you so much for coming back, and we are going to get started. So in our previous live lesson, we were talking about how to write a topic sentence. We discussed how the topic sentence is the very first sentence in all of our middle paragraphs. Now, as a quick review, let's remind ourselves of how we are going to structure our T1, T2, and T3 middle paragraphs. All of these middle paragraphs are always going to be structured or organized in the same way. Each paragraph is going to begin with a topic sentence. Then we will write 4 to 6 sentences of support for our A subtopic and 4 to 6 sentences of support for our B subtopic. Now, in our last lesson, we talked about how our A and B sentences are going to be a mixture or a balance of elaborative techniques. What that means is that some of our A and B sentences will be evidence from the text that has been quoted. Other sentences will be evidence from the text that has been paraphrased. And then sometimes we are going to include our own thoughts and ideas about this evidence. Now, our own thoughts and ideas are when we think critically about the evidence and we draw a conclusion or make an inference. So we will use quotes, paraphrases, and own thoughts and ideas to write our 4 to 6 A and B sentences. Finally, we are going to complete each middle paragraph by including a wrap-up sentence. Now, this sentence is just like it sounds. A wrap-up sentence brings the paragraph to a close. It summarizes for the reader what this whole paragraph was about. So we're going to state the main idea of each middle paragraph twice, once at the beginning in the topic sentence and once at the end in the wrap-up sentence. Now let's review how to write a clear and complete topic sentence. Remember, this is the very first sentence in each of your middle paragraphs. A topic sentence will have 3 parts. The first is a transition word. Now, this is a word that helps to organize your essay and allow your audience or your reader to see the topics presented in a logical and sequential manner. The second part of your topic sentence is there is somewhere you need to remind your readers what the central idea of your essay is. What is the entire essay about? Usually this comes from the prompt. The third thing you need in every topic sentence is going to be the topic of that specific paragraph. So this is an example that we wrote together during our last lesson. This was in response to the Gold Rush text set and plan that we had previously created. So our T1 paragraph is going to be all about how gold is found or discovered, how it is extracted from the earth. So the topic sentence rewrote has 3 parts. First, getting gold from the earth can be quite a process. The 3 parts are the transition word you see highlighted in pink, which is first, because this is our first middle paragraph. The prompt or the central idea is highlighted in blue. And the topic of this specific paragraph, which is our T1 paragraph, is highlighted in green. So these are the 3 different parts that will comprise our clear and complete topic sentences. Now today we are going to be moving into the next part of our middle paragraph, and this is our A and B sentences. Now, as we just reviewed, we are going to write these A and B sentences in 3 different ways. Sometimes we will quote evidence, sometimes we will paraphrase evidence, and sometimes we will include our own thoughts and ideas about the evidence. Well, today we're going to focus specifically on how to quote evidence. We're also going to discuss how do we cite our source or reference our source. Citing or referencing is when you give credit to the place in which you received that information. So as a quick review, if you haven't learned about quoting yet, or if it's been quite a while, let's talk about what a quote is, and then we can talk about how we can cite the evidence for a quote. A quote is when you take exact words from a text set. So you basically copy a sentence or two from one of the articles into your middle paragraphs. You don't change any of the words. You copy the sentences exactly as they were written. Those are a couple things to keep in mind when you're quoting. First, we only want to quote once or twice per middle paragraph. And the number of quotes really depend on how long the quoted material is. We want our middle paragraphs to show our reader how great we are at writing, right? We want to show our reader that we've comprehended what we've read, that we understand it. And in order to communicate our understanding, we have to include evidence, yes, but we also have to discuss the evidence. And if all we do is copy information from the article, if all we do is quote within our middle paragraph, then our reader doesn't know that we understand the material. Our reader thinks, oh, this writer just knows how to copy from the sources. So for that reason, we're going to limit the number of quotes we put in our middle paragraphs. If you write just one short quote, you can go ahead and add another one to that middle paragraph and maybe give 2 short or medium length quotes. But if you have a very long quote in your middle paragraph, perhaps you quoted 2 or 3 sentences, that's a very long, lengthy quote, then we're only going to include that one quote in each middle paragraph. So it really depends on the length. Now, any of the words that you do copy from the article and you include in your paragraph have to be surrounded by quotation marks. So we should have opening quotation marks at the beginning of the copied sentence or sentences, and then we have closing quotation marks at the end. The third thing that we need to remember is that the information we're quoting, well, those thoughts and those ideas came from someone else's brain, right? They came from the author of that article or that source. So we need to give credit to that place. We need to tell our reader where the quoted sentence came from. So this is called either citing the source or referencing the source. There's lots of different ways you can do that, and I'm going to show you a couple of them today. So here is a complete example of a quote. Now let's just take a look at this example, and we're going to practice writing our own quotes in just a few moments. If you are using a writer's notebook or a folder to keep notes as we continue through these live lessons, it might be a great idea to open up that notebook now and copy down this example quote. This is a clear and complete quote that is clearly labeled. And if you copy this quote into your notebook and label all of the parts, well, then you are going to have a really handy set of notes to refer to when you write independently in just a few moments. So let's take a look and examine this example quote. The quote says, as stated by the author of The Gold Rush, the term 49er refers to the year 1849, when over 90,000 people went to California to seek their fortune. All right, so there's lots of parts in this sentence, and they've been labeled for you. So let's take a look at them. First of all, let's look at the information that's been copied from the article. So do you see those opening quotation marks? They come right before the word the. The opening quotation marks let you know that we are now going to be copying information from the article, that sentence that is within the quotation marks has come directly from the source. So the quoted sentence is, the term 49er refers to the year 1849, when over 90,000 people went to California to seek their fortune. That is the quoted sentence. At the end of that sentence, after the period, you will see closing quotation marks. So basically, we took a sentence from the article, we put quotation marks at the beginning of the sentence and quotation marks at the end. Now let's take a look at the citation or the reference. We find that at the beginning of the sentence. At the beginning of the sentence, it says, as stated by the author of The Gold Rush. Now this lets our reader know that our quote came from the gold rush. Now, the phrase at the beginning of that sentence, as stated by the author, that is called EBT. And EBT is an acronym. It stands for evidence-based terminology. I know that sounds really fancy, but evidence-based terminology is really quite simple. It is simply a phrase that introduces your reader to the title of the article, or the author's name, or the page and paragraph number. It introduces your reference. So as stated by the author is an example of an EBT phrase. And don't worry, I'm going to give you more examples in just a moment. Whenever we use an EBT phrase, though, we have to combine it with the specific place where the information came from. So in this case, we combined our EBT phrase with the title, and the title is also within quotation marks. The title of this article is The Gold Rush. Now, sometimes you're going to use an EBT phrase and the title. Sometimes you're going to use an EBT phrase and the author's name. Sometimes you're going to use an EBT phrase and the source number. But do you know why it's so important that we always include either the author, the title, the source number, or the page and paragraph number? Well, here's why. Would it be helpful to you if I said, the article said? Would that help you know exactly where I got this sentence from? It wouldn't, would you? Because guess what? In this text set, there was more than one article. Within a text set, there's going to be 2, 3, maybe 4 different articles. So if I say to my reader, hey, this sentence came from the article, they won't know if I'm talking about Article 1 or Article 2 or Article 3. So we always have to be specific. So this is letting my reader know very clearly that this quoted sentence right here came from the Gold Rush article. Let me give you another example. Imagine you're in college. You'll be there before you know it. And you are writing a research paper for your professor. And you in your research paper write, the book said, and then include a quote. Will your professor know which book? No, right? They need to know the title of the book or the author of the book. They need some more specific information to know exactly where your quoted evidence came from. So just like when we write research papers, when we're writing informative or expository essays and we are including evidence in our text, we must also tell our reader exactly where the information came from. All right, so now that we had a chance to look at a completed example, let's talk a little bit more about EBT. Again, this might be something that might be helpful for you to jot down in your writer's notebook to refer to later in the future. So here's a few example EBT phrases. According to the article, in the text by, on page paragraph number, it says, a couple other phrases. In source 3, the author states, the article by so-and-so says. So EBT are just any phrases that you use to introduce the place where the information came from. Now, how do I name where the information came from? Well, that's very simple. You either are going to write the passage title or the article's title, the author's name, the source number, or the page and paragraph number. Any of these options are okay. So you could say, according to the article, alligator habitats, and use the title. Or you could say, according to source 2, and use the source number. You could say, according to the article by John Smith, and use the author's name. Or you could say, according to page 2, paragraph 7, and use the page and paragraph number. You can name your source in any of those 4 ways: titles, author, source number, or page and paragraph number. So it's really important that you name your source in a specific and clear manner. So here are lots of different examples of EBT in use. At the top, you see an example stating the, an example of referencing or citing the source using the title. The second one will show you an example of referencing using the author's name. Third example is going to show you a reference or a citation using the page and paragraph number. And finally, at the bottom, you will see an example using the source number. Now, here's the only tricky part you have to remember. You can only use the information that is given. So what I mean is if you have 2 articles in front of you and they both have titles, well, then you can reference the title. If they have author names, you could reference using the author. But what if the author's name isn't listed? Can you just make up an author? No, right? What if the articles that you're using have source numbers? What if one says source 1 and one says source 2? Could you reference or cite using source numbers? Absolutely. But what if they didn't have source numbers? Could you just number them yourself? Could you say, this is number 1 and this is number 2? No. You can only use the information that is included in your article. So if there's a title, use it. If there's an author, that's fine. If there's a source number, if there's paragraph numbers, you can use all of those information. But if they do not include the title, the author, the source number, then you'll have to use what you have available. Now let's talk about a second way we can cite our source. I'm going to grab a sip of water, and while I do that, why don't you jot down this definition in your writer's notebook? Okay, now let's talk about a second way we can cite our source. So this is called using parenthetical citations. It sounds awfully fancy, doesn't it? It's not that fancy though. Parenthetical citations are when you simply put the title, author's name, excuse me, source number, or a page and paragraph number in parentheses after your evidence. So here are a few examples. At the top is an example of parenthetical citations where we are citing or referencing the title. And the example says, Benjamin Franklin and other founders helped pave the way for the healthcare of our country's citizens. And then in parentheses, you see the pioneer Benjamin. The second example is going to show you paraphrased evidence followed by the author's name. The third example is going to show you quoted evidence followed by the page and paragraph number. And the last example is going to show you quoted evidence followed by the source number. So again, we can cite our sources either with EBT or with parenthetical citations. Either way, we are going to use the title, author, page and paragraph number, or source number. Any of those ways of referencing or citing are completely appropriate. Now we're going to practice. So I am first going to model for you writing a quote. While I'm writing a quote, your job is to watch, to look, to listen. After I'm done, we're going to practice one together, and then you're going to do one on your own. Are you ready? You're going to need a blank piece of paper and a pencil in order to participate. That is all you need. I will be displaying the evidence up on the screen for you. So grab a piece of paper, grab a pencil, and we're going to get started. So this is an excerpt from source number 1, which is titled The Gold Rush. Paragraph number 5 states, the population of California rapidly increased due to the discovery of gold. The term 49er refers to the year 1849, when over 90,000 people went to California to seek their fortune. By 1855, it is estimated that 300,000 gold prospectors and merchants went to California because of gold. All right, so I am going to quote the very last sentence of this paragraph. I'm going to go ahead and underline it for you so that you can clearly see the sentence that I am going to be quoting. Okay, so there we go. That very last sentence in the paragraph is a sentence I'm going to quote. I'm going to quote using parenthetical citations. So the very first thing I do when I am quoting with parenthetical citations is I copy the sentence exactly how it is written. So I'm going to put opening quotation marks, then I will copy the sentence. Okay, now I copied the sentence exactly how it was written. I didn't change any of the words. Once I am done copying the sentence, I put closing quotation marks. Then I do opening parentheses, And inside of my parentheses, I can write the source number, or I can write the title, or I could write the paragraph number. Any of those ways of citing or referencing my source would be correct. So let me show you this one more time. After my quote, closing quotation marks, open parentheses, name my source in some way, closing parentheses, and period. Now that is a complete quote. Not too tricky, right? All right. Now it is going to be your turn to try. So we are going to work on this one together and I will help you. Let's take a look at paragraph number 3. I would like you to pick one of the sentences from this paragraph and quote it. So again, you're going to either use EBT or parenthetical citations. So EBT would be a phrase, according to source 1, the author of the Gold Rush says, paragraph 3 states. You can use an EBT phrase like that and then quote, or you can write your quote and then include a parenthetical citation. So go ahead and give this a try now, and then I am going to show you a complete example as soon as you're done. I'll give everyone about 1 minute to write a quote from paragraph 3 now. Okay, a few more seconds, everybody. Finish up your quote. All right, let's go over an example together. Now let's keep in mind when I'm going to show you an example, I'm just going to show you one possible correct response. There's a lot of different ways you could have quoted within this paragraph. First of all, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sentences. So you could have picked any of these sentences. Second of all, you could have quoted with EBT or a parenthetical citation. So there's lots of options. Let's just take a look at one correct option. So in this example, this citation or reference is including an EBT phrase and the title. The EBT phrase is, in the text, it states. Accompanying this EBT phrase is the title, the Gold Rush. So our complete reference or citation is, in the text, the Gold Rush, it states, and then we have the quoted sentence. Now, the important thing to look at this quoted sentence, and you can check yours, is, do you have opening quotation marks at the beginning of the sentence you copied? And do you have closing quotation marks at the end of the sentence you copied? So go ahead and take a look at your quote now. Make sure you have both opening and closing quotation marks. And make sure that you either included an EBT phrase with the title, author, source number, or paragraph number. Or check that you use parenthetical citations. And again, in parentheses, put either source number, title, author, or paragraph number. Did you check it? Excellent. All right, let's try one more. So this comes as an excerpt from paragraph 9. It still comes from source 1, the Gold Rush. You're going to choose one sentence out of this paragraph to quote. You will copy the sentence, making sure to use opening and closing quotation marks. And then you will choose to either reference with EBT at the beginning or at the end, or with parenthetical citations at the end. Go ahead and take about 2 minutes and write one quote from this paragraph now. All right, one more moment or so. All right, did everyone have an opportunity to finish? Excellent. Let's take a moment and check over our quoted evidence. So this is just, again, one example. There's so many different ways you could have correctly quoted and referenced your source. Let's look at one example together. This one has the EBT phrase based on the article. So again, you could have chosen any EBT phrase you wanted. And then they named their source by including the title, which is the gold rush. You could have combined EBT with the title, the source number, the author, or the paragraph number. Finally, there is the quoted sentence in quotation marks. Foreigners had to pay a minor's tax of $20 per month in order to pan for gold. Take a look at the sentence that you copied from that paragraph. Did you use opening and closing quotation marks at the beginning of your quoted sentence? Excellent. Did you use either an EBT phrase and a title, author, source number, page and paragraph number, or did you use parenthetical citations? Everybody check it. Great job. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's middle school live lesson, where we talked about quoting evidence and citing or referencing our sources. In our next lesson, when we meet on Thursday, we are going to talk about paraphrasing evidence. We'll practice paraphrasing for a bit, and then we will discuss how to include our own thoughts and ideas when we are drawing a conclusion or making an inference about our evidence. Great job today, everyone, and I'll see you next time.